Welcome, everyone. So this is part of the ISBE grant opportunity to pilot career exploration and career development experiences. And so this is our first community of practice for this opportunity, where we're going to have presenters from throughout the state sharing about what they're doing in career exploration and for career development experiences. But then we'll have time as well for actually breaking out in groups and chatting with one another. But as we kind of get going here, would love to just hear who's here. So in the chat, if you could just take a moment, write your name, title, organization, and then as we are all coming from all throughout Illinois, would love to know from where you're at. Some folks are very familiar with all the spaces, some not as much where organizations are. So we'd love for you to share that and kind of see all the different regions of Illinois that are represented here today. And just friendly reminders, if you are not sharing out loud with the group, if you can please make sure to mute both your computer and your phones. I know I've kind of run into that with my phone a couple of times, but then we are very much going to have time for questions after each presenter. So, unmute yourself to ask those questions, put your questions in the chat. So I'm going to do really just a quick kind of introduction here and then turn it to the presenter. So I'll help monitor that chat and flag for presenters if there's any questions to kind of address as they're speaking or hold those to the end. But awesome. Thank you all for putting these pieces in. And I'm Heather Pensack, by the way. I'm a policy and program manager here with Education System Center. And I know we have some folks who are still kind of learning about where my role is and the opportunity. So I'm going to review that here in a bit, but very much providing a role of being involved in work-based learning at a state and a community level, helping to coordinate these communities of practice and also provide any kind of continuing professional development or technical assistance as you all are grappling with your plans and piloting these opportunities. Wonderful. Well, as you can see, we have lots of folks and lots of different roles represented from all across the state. And so before we fully kind of dive in to our actual presentation and have presenters share about their pilot plans and do a quick review of this opportunity here, we'd love to just spend a moment for us all to get connected. So one of the most beneficial things about communities of practice is actually finding others who are doing similar work, being able to get in the weeds with them. And so very much want to do some community and network building within this space. So I'm going to put you on small breakout rooms of probably about 3 people and would love for you to just share who has been your most influential mentor and why. And this can be personally, professionally, maybe a combo of both. But as you're thinking about who that might be, I'm going to get our breakout rooms going here. So again, there's going to be just about 3 people in each group. Introduce yourself and share with one another who your most influential mentor is and why that is. I was actually thinking about one of my, a director that I worked with when I was working with an internship program. I was talking to them the other day, and one of the things they said to me that's always stuck with me is that students vote with their feet. So if they show up, that's their vote, that they want to be there, that it's something that's meaningful to them, and that is their vote with their feet. It's something that always kind of sticks with me. We'd love to hear maybe a couple of people share out about an influential mentor and why that person was influential.
I'll share mine. My mentor would be my bishop. And one of the reasons I've witnessed him juggle many things in addition to running the church. He's a hematologist, oncologist at Lurie Children's Hospital. And just to see him practice what it is that he says he's interested in, it has just been very life-changing for me. And I take on a lot of stuff in the same manner. So I would have to say he would be my most influential.
Thanks, Lamont. Yeah, think about someone who takes on a lot but lives their values through all of it, right? It's a difficult thing to do, but very important. Would anyone else like to share about one of their mentors? All right. Well, thanks all. Hope you got to get connected with some folks here and think about again. So as we engage in the space of work-based learning, and we're talking about providing experiences for young people to help them explore careers or engage directly in that, like through a career development experience, we are connecting them with mentors who might stick with them throughout their whole entire lives. They might be there for a moment. They might say one little thing that sticks with them the rest of their lives. I think we can all think back to people that we don't necessarily talk to anymore, but something they said kind of comes up for us maybe every day, every few days, every month, right? Certain times a year. So really thinking carefully about the mentors we've had and how they've been influential, and how we're being thoughtful when we create these experiences to connect young people with the same types of mentors. So I'm going to get my screen up here again for us. And so what we are really going to do today is talk about a few different things. So again, kind of provide an overview of the grant opportunity. We discussed this at the kickoff back in August, but I know there's some new folks joining today. So just want to do a quick recap of that. All the materials and recording and everything too from the kickoff is available. So if you need anything like that, I'll put my contact information in the chat and you can always reach out and gather that. But then we're really going to focus on our 3 community presentations. So we have 3 different communities, 3 different presenters who are going to talk to us about what they're doing in career exploration, what they're doing for their career development experiences to spur thinking. So I think a big piece of this is thinking through how do we look at models that are happening elsewhere and determine how those models can be incorporated within our own spaces, or what learnings or kind of best practices we can take from that in our own communities. But then really going to spend some time reflecting and getting in small breakout rooms again. I'm going to have them themed kind of by the type of experience that you are most focused on, and kind of the grade level industry that you're doing that in. So we're going to, try this out for the first time here today with this community practice of getting into those themed rooms, but we will do it. So again, I'm Heather Pensack, a policy and program manager here with Education Systems Center. We're based out of Northern Illinois University, but are part of that division of outreach. So we do a lot of work at a state and a community level, and my focus is really in the work-based learning space. So developing resources that are statewide, but then also working closely with communities as they implement and grapple with their whole continuum of experiences in work-based learning. And I know we have Karen on the line too. Karen, if you wanted to say hello.
Hello, everyone. I am locked out of my computer this morning, so I feel like I'm completely lost. I'm here from ISBE in the Springfield office, and I am working on like the grant management side of this opportunity. So any questions you have about, whether the project is fundable, that's the person you need to reach is me.
Thanks, Karen. And so just as a quick recap here, the purpose of the grant is really thinking about gathering and hearing about those innovative resources and sharing those across Illinois to help promote those career exploration and career development experiences, which, as we all know or are learning right now, are so crucial to helping students really grapple with what it is they want to do in high school, what it is they want to do post-secondary, what careers, occupations they're interested in. Actually engaging in that experience really does help solidify that, or it also helps tell students, no, this is absolutely not what I want to be doing, which is also a win, right? For them to learn that earlier in the phase before they're spending a lot of time and money pursuing a career or industry that they actually are realizing they're not as interested in. A big piece too of what we're going to do is develop a statewide resource bank. So your presenters today are going to share all kinds of resources and models. Those are going to be uploaded and shared with you all, right, directly after this, but ultimately they're going to be put into a resource bank that's hosted through the Illinois State Board of Education, and they can be utilized statewide. So folks outside of this grant opportunity who are doing career exploration and career development experiences will be learning from you all and your pilot plans and the resources and lessons learned that you have. And so like Karen mentioned, they are really here from that ISBE side about the grant activities, funding questions, pieces like that. A role that I'm playing, again, is gathering these communities of practice. So getting presenters, getting resources for it, but providing that guidance, that technical assistance. So if you're having questions about the design of your work-based learning, kind of how to build it together, what resources might be helpful, I can very much help you with that. But what we're really going to be doing through these communities of practice is covering content and sharing resources that's reflecting the needs and questions from you all. So each time that we do a community of practice, I'm going to have a little survey for you all to say what was valuable, what would you have actually liked to have had and didn't maybe get, to make sure that that's incorporated into either the next community of practice or shared out as a resource via email to you all. we're going to record everything. There's resource folders here that I'll show you all in a moment. And actually, let me put in the link to the presentation again, just in case. I know some folks were joining a little bit later. But then, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have those presentations and then time for small group breakout discussions. So the format of today is going to be repeated multiple times throughout this school year. So in August, we had our kickoff. October, right now, this is our community of practice. We're going to have 2 more kind of similar formatted community of practices in December and February. And then in April is really going to be a time to showcase. So reflecting on the experience, we're going to have a couple more presentations, but I think there is, if someone can just check their might have, so just really thinking about what were those best practices, what were those lessons learned, what resources did you all end up developing, and really just celebrating the experience of the school year. And even if the pilot wasn't what you thought it was, there were still learnings that you gathered from there, ways that you're thinking about doing this for next year, and just really thinking through how do we make this then sustainable? How do we start to think about scaling it? And just having that time to reflect as a group in April before the end of the year. And so here's a quick recap and a bunch of links in here too from the August kickoff convening. So in that one, we didn't have any community level presentations. I did way too much talking probably in that one, but really just wanted to set the stage and provide the different state frameworks and resources that exist for work-based learning, but then also dive into some best practices, some community models, some different resources as well for career exploration and for career development experiences specifically. And those are all linked in here. So we have a growing resource folder that I'll upload the materials from today into. Also provided, there was a request in the feedback last time of seeing what other people are up to. So there are links here for the submitted pilot plans, kind of showing you a snapshot and the descriptions of what people are planning to do this year. Those plans might be changing, but they're descriptive enough that you can, again, start to get some inspiration for what it is that you want to do, how you might be thinking about it as you kind of read what others are up to. And then there's design templates there too. These are not required to be utilized, but they really are there for you to think through the design of your experience, all the different components that need to be included within that. And so what we're really focused on here is the work-based learning continuum. But before I kind of dive right into this, are there questions about these communities of practice or the grant opportunity or anything like that, kind of generally for the group? Well, if you think of them, please feel free to put them in the chat. I have my contact information here too, and Karen as well, if you ever want to reach out to us. Our contact info is at the end of the presentation. But so within this opportunity, we are really focused on these 2 kind of components in red here along the work-based learning continuum. So the state has defined a work-based learning continuum, having students really start at that career awareness level where they're starting to kind of just grapple with some things, maybe taking surveys or watching videos, but then moving into here, this career exploration, where they're really engaging directly with industry professionals, and then along the continuum towards more robust experiences. And so we have these definitions outlined in the Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary. And so they are meant to be broad, but they're also meant to be explicit about the quality for that type of experience. So for career exploration, you have an activity such as a job shadow, attendance at a career exposition, or employer site visit, providing an individual with the ability to engage directly with employers for the purpose of gaining knowledge of one or more industry sectors or occupations. So this is the definition. This is what we're keeping in mind as we're designing these experiences and thinking about how young people are engaging directly with those employers and how they're really gaining knowledge about that industry sector and the occupations that are available within that. And so presenters today are going to share about that type of experience with you. Career development experience. Won't read this all out loud for you all right now, but did want to just put it up here. Again, this is, it's a supervised work experience. It's a broad term when you all think about like an internship, right? A supervised agricultural experience. If you think about what was co-op, which is now workplace learning, right? Karen, correct me if I'm wrong. But these types of robust experiences where students at this stage are generally, they're engaging independently, they're working with an employer or at an employer. Maybe it's a hybrid, fully virtual, hybrid, fully in person, right? but they're getting assessed on their skills and they're participating in this for a minimum of 60 total hours, right? And some folks might split that up into 2 kind of micro internships for 30 hours each, but ultimately they really are working for those 60 hours. I think about like in the education pathway, this is almost like a mini student teaching for that young person, right? So they're really engaging in this industry and really deciding for themselves, like, okay, here's what I want to work on. Here's what I'm really good at. I'm still passionate about this. Or they're starting to grapple with like, okay, maybe I like this industry, but maybe I don't quite like this job, right? Again, it's a win within work-based learning if students are also problematizing for themselves that this isn't quite something they want to do, but maybe it's in the industry they're in, but a different occupation. So just wanted to put those definitions up there as a recap, and then we'll move into our community presentations. Any questions about anything so far before I turn it over to our first presenter here? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and then turn over actually to Paula. And I think I just got to click out of here quickly. And this should be showing up on the screen here for you now, right?
Excellent. We all set?
We are good. Take it away,
Okay.
Paula.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for inviting me today to speak to you and to share a little bit about my role in District 211 and the career exploration services that I provide for the students in our district. My name is Paula Waterman, and I do work for D211, and I am placed at Hoffman Estates High School. And my job in the building is to really just connect students with career information and exploration experiences. So next slide, please. So before I talk about what we do on a day-to-day basis, I'd like to explain a little bit about how we're structured and how that network helps us have a diverse set of contacts and resources. So I work in Hoffman Estates High School, and I serve the students not only in my building, but in all of 211. But I'm not paid by 211. I'm actually paid by Nexus, and I'm employed by Nexus, and that's the Northwest Educational Council for Student Success. And that is a consortium of the president of Harper College, which is our local community college, and then all of the districts that feed into that college, which is Barrington, District 220, that's about 3,000 students, it's one building. District 214, which is 6 different high schools, that serves about 12,000 students. And then my district, District 211, which is 5 buildings, and we serve about 12,000. So all told, Nexus serves roughly 27,000 students. And while I work most closely with the 5 advisors in my building, I also reach out to our counterparts in 214 and 220 to share resources and get ideas and help one another out. Oops, I think. So the way our program is structured in District 211 is that we have one career advisor, one of my position, in each of our 5 buildings. And we really are the boots on the ground. We are the ones that have the FaceTime with the students. We are the ones that answer their questions. We work directly with their students. Typically, we work under the student services umbrella. So some of us have offices within that student services portion of the building. But most of us, I believe, are placed in our media centers, which makes it very, very easy for the students to access us. We get FaceTime with them. They know that we exist. They know that we are an option to get career information. So I think that really helps when we're placed in those media centers to find it easy, make it easier for the students to reach out to us. Our positions are part-time. They are flexible. So we're able to kind of work with our buildings to set our schedules and obviously come in whenever needed to work with students directly, because students are, as you know, are busy with clubs and activities. So sometimes I make meetings before school and sometimes I meet with them after school. But I do have a core set of hours that all students can always find me if I'm not on a field trip. So counselors often refer students to us to get more information about careers, certifications, licensing, and training programs, because I'm sure all of you know that our counselors are just overwhelmed right now. They're overwhelmed with dealing with students that have anxiety, issues at home. And so sometimes that career piece is really getting shortchanged in some instances. So they love having a resource like us in the building to send those students to get additional information. So I'm often getting referrals from our counselors. I also have walk-ups. So the main things that we do for our students in District 211, we encourage and assist the students in career exploration and in other career educational pathways. So we just help them learn more about what jobs are out there. We locate and bring speakers to our schools. We set up career treks for our students, and I'll explain a little bit more about what each of these pieces is to meet with professionals. And we also bring in volunteers for our District 211 Career Expo. So now I'll talk a little bit about each of those 4 pieces. So career exploration is simply learning about what careers are out there and seeing what careers might be a good fit for those students, as I'm sure you're all aware. Students are told all the time that they need to take, specific classes, and they have to be college ready, and they have to, join all these clubs and find leadership positions, but no one ever asks them what they want to do. They never ask them to think about what their values are, what their interests are, and how those personal qualities might impact their future satisfaction with their career. They'll be working for 40 years once they graduate. So it behooves them to make sure that they get into an industry or a career that brings them satisfaction, makes them happy, because they are more likely to be successful in those areas. So the first thing that I do when I meet with students, either on an individual basis or as a classroom, is I just get them thinking about themselves, right? What are their values, personal values? What are their interests? What are they good at? What do they like studying? What are their personalities like? Are they outgoing? Are they introverted? And what things are they naturally good at learning or good at picking up? And through those conversations, after that, I have them complete some online career assessments. I know every school uses different systems. We have online career exploration and career readiness tools that our district uses with our students. Typically, our freshmen and sophomores do those in modules with their counselors. We also have a tool called Xello, Xello, that has some career exploration surveys in there. But I also use online resources that are available through ONET, through the Department of Labor, other various free sources. And I tend to have students click on more than one of those surveys and see which careers kind of pop up in multiple places. If a career or an industry pops up in multiple places, that's a good sign, and that might be a good fit for that student at this time. Once we do that, we evaluate their options that are suggested. And then I do a little bit of research online for these students. There is a ton of information on Google, but the students don't really know where to find quality information or accurate information. So I help them locate those resources, learn more about those careers. 1/3 of the jobs out there require 4 years of university or a bachelor's degree, but 2/3 don't. A lot of jobs out there require specific training and certifications or licensing, but that might not be a 4-year university pathway. So I just want to let them know what their options are to get the training that they need for the careers that they are interested in. So once they have a few specific careers that they might be focused on, I work to connect them with working professionals to learn more. That can either be through email, that can be a face-to-face meeting in the school. Sometimes that might be a class presentation. So we work on bringing those external professionals to the buildings to speak with our students. We also have a number of career speakers that we invite to our schools to inform students about what options they have after they leave their buildings. I think this is such an important piece simply because when I grew up, I grew up in River Grove. I saw there was someone here in our group that's working in that area. I lived in a rich, diverse community that had a lot of opportunities for employment, but my world was very, very small. I only knew about what my parents did. I knew about what my neighbors did, but I didn't know about any other careers. And those jobs and those industries seemed so far out of reach because I had no one to talk to, no one to answer my questions. So bringing these people into these students gives them the opportunity to learn more and to just open their eyes as to what opportunities they have out there after they leave high school. So we try to bring in professionals from as many different career clusters as possible, anything from agriculture to hospitality to business to STEM. And we try to bring in as many diverse occupations as possible too, so students have an option to listen to something that they might not have thought about or considered working into. And we bring these speakers to present either in specific classrooms. Maybe an accounting teacher comes to speak to a business class. Maybe a daycare worker comes and speaks to an education class. But typically these presentations are open to all students in our building that are interested in learning about this career. So we don't restrict it. If we have a speaker coming to a classroom and there's a freshman that's in a different class that wants to learn more, we can write them a pass and allow them to go to that space and listen to that presentation. Speakers are always volunteers, and we find them through reaching out to parents through the Booster Club. We use our business partners. We have outreach coordinators sometimes that are looking for like apprentices in the trades. They'll actually reach out to us because they want to reach our students. I am not above asking my friends to talk to my students in my school. And I do a lot of cold calling too. So if there is a need for a career, I will just reach out to a local business and see if there's someone that can come to our school and speak with our kids. This part of our job, I think, is the most fun and the most rewarding for our students, and that is our Career Trek program. So we offer our students the opportunity to participate in Career Treks, which are free field trips that happen during the school day that are open to every single student that is interested in learning more about that career. We visit workplaces for tours. They give presentations from employees. Sometimes they have panels of employees. And this is an opportunity for students to learn about different industries, companies, and careers. We try to visit as many workplaces as possible. And businesses have been very, very open to opening their doors and letting us tour. This year's a little different, being COVID and all, but when times were normal and when people were working in the office and working in labs and working in industry, we were able to visit work sites and give the kids these wonderful hands-on experiences. It also gives a chance for the students to see and visit a workplace, talk with working professionals, and sometimes get their hands on some projects to see what the job is actually like. For instance, this is a photo. We visited a pharmacy school. So students learned what it was like to learn about becoming a pharmacist. They were able to speak with working pharmacists and ask questions about training, about licensing, about job hours, about employment. And our students had a chance to actually create some troches, which are ways to administer medication between your cheek and your gum. If you go to the next slide, that's another image of a different career check that we've done. We take students to culinary spaces as well. There's a big need in our area for culinary professionals, and we visited a catering company that allowed the kids to tour their facilities, speak with a lot of the different job functions in the catering company, and gave them a chance to use culinary blowtorches to make fancy s'mores. So they had a good time with that. But it's not just trades like pharmacy and culinary. We also take kids to learn about CTE trades. If you can go to the next slide. And we visit lots of the union trade apprenticeship programs in our area. So Chicago is a great place to learn a trade. There are training centers all over the area, and we visit carpentry, we visit pipe fitting, we visited many other types of apprenticeship programs in the area. And many students don't know that that's an option for getting career training. So we try to show them that they have many options for training and for education once they leave our building. This is the Carpenters Training Center out in Elk Grove Village, and they have been fantastic partners in hosting our kids on tours there. So these are just a few things that we do to bring career experiences to our students. Can you go to the next slide, please? That might be the end of it. Oh, yes. And once a year, we also host as a district our annual D211 Career Expo. And it's sort of like a college fair, but it's just for jobs. It's just for careers. We don't expect our business partners to offer our students jobs. We are just asking them to show up and speak to our students about what their career is and to give them career information. So we use different buildings throughout our district. So it moves to give students a chance to visit different buildings and also different schools to host. In past years, we've brought in roughly 200 different working professionals from all career clusters, all different positions. And we allow the students 2 hours to come in and talk to them, much like it's a college fair. They get to ask questions about what their job was like, where they work, what degrees they needed to achieve in order to get those positions, what are their other related jobs in their companies, what skills are needed for success. And students from all D211 schools are invited to this event to speak. This event is free to our business partners. It's free to our students. And it's simply a chance for the business partners to connect with our kids and for our kids to get connected with business information. And this has been very valuable too. I think in past years, we've had roughly 600 students walk through and speak with anywhere from 150 to 200 or so employers. So that's been a great connection too. And many of the speakers that come and present at our Career Expo are the same volunteers that come and speak in our buildings or allow us to visit their locations for career treks. So it's wonderful to get connected with the community and to get our students just aware of what opportunities there are right in our backyard for employment and for training. So that's just a brief overview of what we provide our students for career exploration. If you have any questions or like to connect, please feel free to reach out to me through email, or I'm also on LinkedIn. So feel free to hit me a request and I'd be happy to connect.
Thank you so much, Paula. And I know one of the really valuable pieces here at our kickoff, there was a lot of questions about like, what are all the different things you got to be thinking about as you're coordinating students, and what are all the different roles, and what are all the moving pieces? And so I think just Paula's role and the different things that they do are just really helpful to be thinking about, you know, in different spaces. It might not be just one person doing all those things. It might be a group of people, but they are really things to consider as you're coordinating these experiences. But We'd love to give some time here if you all have questions for Paula. Please feel free to unmute yourself or put those in the chat. I have a question that I don't know if Paula or even Nancy want to answer is like, before your role, right? Like how was work-based learning coordinated?
I'm not sure how it was done in the building. We've had this career advisor program for a while, but the role has sort of evolved over the years as the needs of our students have changed depending on business conditions. I know we have some work-based learning where the students leave the building and go to either like an automotive space, one about becoming a mechanic, or they work in a factory, or they might work in retail or hospitality or healthcare. But that's a different program entirely. That's not connected with us. We simply provide the students career exploration opportunities, but I don't handle that work-based learning piece of it. That's a different program entirely, because they have to work with curriculum to make sure that they can get credit for those pieces as well.
Thanks, Paula. Well, you will have Paula's contact information. Please feel free to reach out. They're a wealth of knowledge. I always like tee up presenters that they're open to be connected with, but I think I always get presenters who are excited to connect and continue to answer questions. So please feel free to reach out. I do see one question here from Laura about how many students participate in the career trek.
It really varies depending on the ability of our host companies to accept visitors into their space. So there are some places that can bring in 20 kids. There are some places that can bring in 50 or 100. So we work with our business partners to see what their capacities are. And then when we send out this information to our students that we have an opportunity, we'll let them know we have space to bring 12 students or 20 students. The first 20 that get permission slips in would be guaranteed space in the bus, and then everyone else is placed on a wait list. But we try to offer to as many students as possible. And career trek's open to everyone. So not just seniors that are in, healthcare, anybody that wants to attend can come.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Paula, for all the work that you do, and excited to continue to hear how the year goes and any new best practices or learnings that you have.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And I'm going to let me get my screen up here. And Lamont, I will be having you share here in just a moment. It's always when you have one screen, then you got to move the camera around to go to the present button. All right, does this look good, Lamont?
Yes, it does.
Wonderful.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lamont Hollyfield, the CTE director at Crete Moni High School, and I'm also the EFE director for 060, which is Career Preparation Network. And today, I want to talk to you about something we're doing with our career exploration funds. And it's entitled Educator Rising with a Twist. I'm going to share the backstory about the twist first to help each of us understand how vitally important it is to participate in professional development opportunities. Earlier this school year, I was afforded the opportunity to attend IWIN's virtual work-based learning program. It was a professional development that I think went over 6 meetings. I had already talked with students and administrators here, and we decided that Educator Rising would be the CTSO that we wanted to introduce. And so that I'm not using the jargon out of context, that's a CTE student organization. Illinois is leading the way and is the first state to endorse Educator Rising as a CTSO. But due to the virtual work-based learning, I decided, you know what, I can incorporate some of my learning into Educator Rising to give it an extra boost. And that's what I want to talk about today. Can you advance to the next slide? So my agenda, I'm going to first set the stage. What is the rationale and what's the problem? Why did we have to come up with this? Give you some background information, talk about the proposed pilot, and then entertain any questions that you may have. Next slide. So as we know, according to Business Insiders, the number of Americans that are going into the teaching profession has dropped by 1/3 since 2010. And it has set the stage for a critical educator shortage that will impact every state. As if that was not enough, we had COVID to surface, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics has reported that there are about 641,000 fewer Americans working in state and local education in July. And that data is just a few months after February within that same year. Next slide. Also in some states like Michigan, Oklahoma, and our state, enrollment in programs, teaching programs has declined by 50%. And what we can say about it, there are many reasons that we can debate as to why individuals are not going into education. Some raise up that it's a low-paying profession. Others talk about the dwindling school funding. And this has possibly discouraged potential educators, which has not helped. As a matter of fact, it has exacerbated the nationwide teacher shortage. And instead of just standing still and saying, oh, isn't that bad? What we've decided to do here at CREET is we're gonna step up and think a little differently, which leads to my next slide. You're gonna see me in China in 2019. That's my little Martin Luther King image. So I decided I'm gonna dare to dream. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna dream big. I've been in education for 25 plus years, began in pre-K, taught mathematics, every course in the high school from algebra all the way through the calculus sequences, AP statistics, all of that in Chicago and surrounding suburbs. I've been a principal of a 7th to 12th grade middle high school, and I've served as a high school administrator in several schools. Plus, I'm also a member of Roosevelt University's New Deal College of Education Advisory Board. And in all of these capacities, what has driven me to stay with the profession is not the pay, but seeing the need. I ask students to think about what career could you go into and you would not need a teacher. And they struggle to find one because teaching is at the foundation of any career that you would want to pursue, which leads to my next slide. So what I saw is that Educator Rising and Practera, which I was introduced to in the virtual work-based learning training, they make for a great marriage. And I'm going to talk about that. First of all, just to give you a little bit more insight on Educator Rising, it's a CTE movement that is aimed at inspiring high school students to serve their communities by entering the field of education. On the other hand, Practera is a platform that allows educators like myself and others to engage learners with real-world experiences at a large scale. It affords students the opportunities to work on authentic projects, internships, and experiences. A lot of people would argue there is no replacement for being in person and getting the experience hand-on. I would push back and tell you that a lot of what needs to happen when we go into a classroom is the planning that needs to occur before you even walk into the door. And Practera is a viable platform that allows our rising scholars to connect with these educational professionals on their own schedule, because now I don't have to disrupt a curriculum specialist during the day when they could be called into meetings for a plethora of reasons. They're working virtually and the mentor can respond to the student at their leisure. But best of all, the whole experience has to be designed from start to finish because we are virtual. Whereas you and I both know when we do it in person, a lot of times because of the busyness of our role, we wing it and then things change and shift. Whereas if we had a virtual platform, there's no disruption in their cycle of learning. Next slide. So the benefits of Educator Rising, number one, it helps them to embrace the calling of teaching as a profession, and not only teaching, but it introduces them to other careers in education as well. I was talking to someone, it's amazing to me how a lot of students think that the principal is the highest that you can go in education. One of the first field trips needs to be to the district office so that they can see all of the other roles that keep schools running, like the CFO, the superintendent, so that they can aspire for not only teaching, you can start there, but there's a clear pathway into other roles as well. Also, it aids them in learning techniques and getting clinical experiences as an accomplished teacher, even before they go to college. When we are able to move about, one of the benefits of my particular district is that we're a unit district. So we have pre-K all the way through 12th grade. So no matter what those students or what level those students want to teach at, they can get that experience even within our district. It also helps them, aids them in getting recognized as a student leader and as an advocate for education. And I'm big on it. This is where my passion lies, because I think back even growing up, there was an 11th grade teacher that inspired me to become a teacher. They didn't have a sign saying enter the profession, but I was attracted by the passion she exuded in the geometry classroom. And I made up my mind right then and right there, I want to be just like this individual. And I'm very happy I entered the field. And that's what I want to come across to the scholars here. Next slide. So what are the benefits of Practera? First of all, it's a robust learning design because what it will allow us to do is to create inspiring, impactful, thought-provoking learning while getting students acclimated with high quality educational research within a safe space in Practera. I can do both print and video and challenge students to think outside of the box. Also, it's very engaging because the learner and the mentors are engaged in the project and learning, and there's a cycle where they're getting feedback, revising, rethinking, and I get the analytics right there. Practera has artificial intelligence that helps to improve cohort outcomes, and overall, I feel that this is going to save us a lot of time and a lot of costs. The other thing I can say about our district, there is always this issue of transportation. Well, if they get the experience, how are they going to get there? And I feel that one of the advantages of Practera is that we can bring the experience to them and move away from this idea, because we can't go there. You can't get the much needed practice. Next slide. For those who are not familiar with Educator Rising, they offer 5 micro-credentials, and they're in the following areas: anti-bias instruction, classroom culture, collaboration, formative assessment, learner engagement. And it's our hope that the design that's built will be built around these 5 micro-credentials, which takes students, according to Educator Rising, a total of 5 to 15 hours to complete each. And what we want to do is to populate Practera with actual educational research to get the student acclimated with the particular area, to load up videos, and to load up questions to get them to think about what it is they want to create before they even start the creation. We have already talked to a lot of deans of colleges of education who are on board and ready, willing, and able to be mentors to these students. I've approached administrators within our district. I've reached out even to my person at ISBE, who used to be a college professor who's willing to get involved to help us to get some traction behind this particular endeavor. Next slide. So this is the Crete-Monee High School experiment. Recruitment efforts started this month. What administration stated to me with no data is that there were no students interested. Got an advisor selected, and she marketed this to 3 class periods. Notice our school has 1,600 students. She marketed to roughly 75 students, and 21 of those students joined the CTSO that day. The red comment, and I go on record saying this, students don't know what they don't know. Hence the need for career exploration to raise awareness. So often we sit around a table and decide this is what I want to do, and we don't bring students into the conversation, or because I'm not enjoying my role, we send off this bad air. Oh, you don't want to go into this. And this is just my PR right now. I wouldn't be in a profession that I didn't want to be in. My whole role for being in education is I'm thinking 2 or 3 generations from now. What type of legacy can I leave? Who can I raise up to replace me that would become a magnet to get other students interested in this profession? Someone may say, what does that have to do with students? These students eventually will have children. We have to help them to think about who's going to educate your children while you're making the statement, oh, I don't want to deal with these bad kids. Your kids are coming through the system one day. Who would you want in front of your child? Next slide. Here's our timeline. So September, we selected an advisor to run the club. October, we're working on student recruitment, industry partner and mentor recruitment. Starting next month and ongoing, we're going to be collaborating with Practera to build the experiential learning platform. And in late December, but most likely after Christmas break, we're going to roll out the platform to a cohort of 25 plus Educator Rising CTSO students to begin with, which leads to my next slide. So why are you raving about this? Here's our hope. As a result of this career exploration initiative, we hope, number 1, to attract more students early in their high school education, at 9th grade if possible, to the education profession, providing them with much needed exposure. We know that like our dual credit that we're dreaming about, that wouldn't take place until 11th and 12th grade, but we have to get students when they first enter. And I'm even thinking about rolling it back to middle school eventually, because we need to even get them before they get to 9th grade. So they begin to think, okay, this is a viable option for me. The other thing, not only will it help the education pathway, but we're looking to see how this virtual work-based learning works with Educator Rising. And we're devising a plan to scale the initiative to other pathways to offer an alternative way to complete work-based learning. I hear some of us, there are some professions where you will need the hands-on, but for those like web design, entrepreneurship and small business where we can get started, we're looking to see how virtual work-based learning will help to alleviate excuses about why we're not able to afford students the exposure to high quality mentors that they need. And lastly, we plan to continue to share what we learn throughout this endeavor with those of you in this community of practice to use as you see fit as we jointly build a model CTE program of study. I'm like, go Illinois, because I know that we can be the leaders in this if we get it right. And this is just our stab or contribution to helping to get us on the right page as we move forward. Last slide. And I want to thank you for listening. All of my information, including my phone number and email address, is on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me. But this is what we're doing, and we're hopeful that we can get some individuals into the profession. What I did not say, we realize that teaching is non-traditional. So a lot of my slides, you saw men that was intentional. And on a lot of our posters in the schools, we have males teaching and minorities because we want to attract people that are representative of genders and demographics that they're going to encounter in education. So thank you for listening, and I'm open to entertain any questions that you may have.
And I linked it for you all. There were a couple of resources that Lamont wanted to make sure were shared. So those are linked in here too as well. Any questions, even thinking about, so I think it's a great flag there too with like your CTSOs, right? So in education and others, like how you're collaborating with them and utilizing their models and their resources to inform your work. I think a lot of times we try to start from like a blank piece of paper and try to figure out what that looks like when there's actually already a lot happening, especially in those organizations that are aligned to those career and tech industries. Lamont is someone who I always appreciate the passion, the intentionality that they bring to the work. I mean, it's tough day to day, right? Out in the field. And I just really appreciate you, Lamont. I'm so excited to see this education experience roll out. I know we had a great discussion too about one of the things Lamont said a couple of months back here. I don't know, time always seems so weird still, is that, you know, a lot of times I used to teach high school biology. And so you would do your observations and pieces like that, but there were behaviors, there were classroom scenarios that you never saw happen live, right? Because they just didn't, they just weren't happening that day. That's when you were observing. But there's a lot more observations and classroom scenarios that you should see as an aspiring educator. And so utilizing a virtual experience, kind of watch some videos, reflect on those, think about how you as an educator might show up in that space where something to happen, I think is a great idea.
Yeah, because some of the students, they're even asking, I know you're talking about Danielson. Will we be able to rate our teachers? And I'm like, whether you get the opportunity or not, the information you're learning will empower you to know what should be happening. And how do you gently make suggestions without being condescending to the teacher? So all of that, I'm trying to help them practice with it, because you will have colleagues that you will encounter that you need to be able to speak to and do it in a way where you're not cutting people down. So all of that will be part of the training.
Well, thank you so much again, Lamont, for sharing today. And again, keep us posted on your progress and your learnings. And I know we'll definitely be reflecting in April together as a group, but you all should have the information in there to connect with Lamont if you have other questions. And we should have some time in breakout rooms too, if you're lucky enough to join a room with Lamont or Paula or our next presenter here, Terry. But I'm going to move us forward here and get my screen shared again to turn it over to Terry, who is really going to dive into a career development experience and talk you through their process and planning for their pilot.
Good morning, everyone. As Heather said, I'm Terry Stroh, and I'm the EFE director in Northern Kane County, EFE 110. I have 4 districts that I work with, U46 in Elgin, District 300 in Algonquin, 301 in Burlington, and 303 in St. Charles. Our whole idea here was to start looking at work-based learning opportunities or internships and apprenticeships for students. If you want to go to the next slide there. So we started off by looking at our Perkins data overall for the region. And the 2 big areas that we had were post-secondary credits and then work-based learning for our students that we were falling short on. So we already have a plan in place for working on our post-secondary credits with our local community college, and we're continuing to focus on that. But then also the work-based learning and starting to look at like where exactly we were falling short within that. So if you can go to the next slide there, please. So we broke down all of our data for all of our schools and started to ask, for me, being only my second year as an EFE director, started to ask questions about what counted as work-based learning. and finding out that it was only the students that were enrolled in that co-op class or that work-based learning class, and started to look at all of those data points. What we found is that some of our schools there with the 0% marks, either one of two things were happening, either more of a college focus for one or two of our schools, or for some of our students not wanting to leave their paid jobs in some of our lower socioeconomic buildings, not wanting to leave their paid jobs to go and do an internship or an apprenticeship with some companies. So we're trying to find some ways to work around that and work on equity pieces within work-based learning in our region. If you want to go to the next slide there. As I said, our lower socioeconomic schools had the lowest percentage of work-based learning. Students, didn't have a way to get out to those places. They didn't want to leave their paid jobs that they currently had within their neighborhoods to go and do those things. Even some of our more affluent schools had students come to us and say, I don't want to leave my paid job, my paid part-time job to go and do these kind of things. So really had to work on explaining to them the benefits of taking that internship or trying to find time for that internship to start getting into that content area or in that work area that they were really interested in, and how it could help build them up for more of a long-term process there. You want to go to the next one? Thank you. So two-tiered approach. As I said before, looking at our work-based learning classes and trying to get more students out for those types of events. This is something that we're even pushing now with students choosing their classes for next year at this time of the year, and trying to talk to students about what are the opportunities. So we have a work-based learning specialist that I work with here in the region, and we've been going out and really focusing on our regional programs. Regional programs here in the area are automotive technology, manufacturing, welding, and then veterinary science. Veterinary science was already really, really strong with work-based learning because they actually have 100 hours that students are required in order to sit for their certification at the end of that class. So they fit more into that second tier I'll talk about in just a second. But for things like automotive and manufacturing and welding, we've been going out trying to find businesses and shops that would allow students to come in and work with them for part-time positions. So on top of that, we also learned that many of our students didn't have the right tools to go out and work in those fields either. It becomes very, very expensive for students to have the right tools to go to work in those regions. We found some businesses, some independent repair shops that had sets of tools for new hires to use, but then we went one step further and we looked at using grant money to purchase sets of tools for those students to be able to then use. And we would go in and check in on those students and see where they're at with their tool sets, things like that. So right now, this has been, I guess, much more difficult than what I originally had thought it would be in trying to find businesses that would be willing to let students come in, even if we were using our grant money to pay them. We're using a portion of our grant money to offset that cost, coming up with short-term employment contracts with our employers to where the employers would pay the student, and then they would go ahead and submit an invoice for an internship hosting fee to my office to then be reimbursed for those dollars. So really trying to find businesses that see the need there or that are willing to do those short-term employment contracts. We have some businesses that are really gung-ho and really willing to do it, such as our automotive dealerships and our repair shops. And then others with the manufacturers and welding shops have been a little more reluctant. And this is because of some of the age requirements for using some of the equipment, things like that, that we've seen out there. Right now, we've started with the automotive dealerships and repair shops. We've actually gone out and started visiting classrooms and talking about these internship opportunities with our students. So far, out of one district, we have approximately about 6 students that are looking to get into that. So now we're working with them on helping them to put their resume together, cover letter together, and then getting them out to start interviewing here shortly with those automotive dealerships. Another thing that's slowing us down with this is that the shipping or the logistics shortage that we all see going across the country. We're waiting on a lot of our tool sets to still come in as well. So once we have all that set, we'll be able to get our students out there working on some of these pieces. Things we found with manufacturers and welding shops, if students are not able to work on certain pieces of equipment, trying to get them in there in other phases of that business, such as quality control or the engineering or the sales department or the shipping department, just so they can be in there in that manufacturing setting and be able to then job shadow people that are using those pieces of equipment that they're not allowed to use. The other piece was getting the work-based learning credit for classes that already had that built into their curriculum. Classes like our business incubator that have business individuals coming in, and we have students actually running their own companies or developing their own companies, including an LLC, getting them credit for that work-based learning for that. Automotive, we have many of our automotive classrooms that have teachers and staff members bring their cars in to work on. So how do we track that work-based learning within those classes? As I mentioned before, veterinary science, those students are required to go out and do 100 hours of externships with veterinary hospitals or veterinary offices in our region. And we are able to place all those students right now with partners that we have and then track all those hours. But that's all built in as part of their classroom. So how, we weren't getting credit for those because it wasn't seen as a separate class within work-based learning. So we've been working on some of those pieces as well. If you want to go to the next slide, please. The next piece was trying to get a plan for the shift from the old co-op model to this work-based or workplace learning model. For many of our teachers who've been doing this for a while, if a student comes in and says, well, great, I got a job at Jewel or I got a job at McDonald's or anywhere else, they were getting that co-op and they were out getting that workplace experience, but they really weren't aligning it to what the students' interests were and to what their CTE programs that they had participated in were. So getting them to shift their focus there to more of those CTE directed or pathway directed positions and getting students more on board with those earlier rather than just a job anywhere in the community, but getting them a job specifically in the region that they're or in the content area that they're most interested in. I had some links there as far as Heather, if you want to click on structure a system there. So we've been working on how to make a flow chart for all this to flow together. And a lot of our business partners had mentioned that they were, it's hard for them to get calls from, I have 11 high schools in our region. If every high school had a work-based learning specialist, kind of like Paula's job, can businesses sit there and take 11 different phone calls or more every week or every month trying to get, positions open? So we've been working with having my work-based learning specialist here in the office or myself be that conduit along with some of our other groups, such as the local community college or the Alignment Collaborative for Education that we work with in trying to build out those relationships. I would say that one of the great examples we saw of this was the Pencil Group out of Nashville, who does a really great job organizing some things. So if you want to check those guys out, they're really helpful and are willing to come and talk to you about how they've organized their system there. But then if you scroll down just a bit on that document there, having our students actually apply for these internships and just instead of just signing up for the class, having them apply so that we can sit and talk with them more about what they need to have accomplished and what they need to have ready. And then looking at our business scene, which kids we have apply for which areas, which content areas, and then partnering them up with those same industry partners from those content areas that we have within the region. You want to go back to the slides there? Thank you. You can go ahead and click on that timeline there. So this timeline has been really hit or miss in trying to get, like I said, trying to get our districts to shift in my region, shift a lot of their thinking. We're in the phase of getting applications in. So we've been going out and visiting classrooms and then hoping that in the spring, we will be able to go out and start doing some of the essential skills training. I know many of our EFE directors, you guys were at the meeting, we talked about some of those essential skills. So being able to get out and get those things built in and working with our teachers in the classrooms in the region to include those pieces as well. We're hoping that we're going to get students placed for June and July for summer internships for those students that don't have work-based learning built into their current schedules right now, but be able to get them out for some summer internships and looking at maybe like 1 week opportunities, 1 week at one company, maybe a second week at another company for them to get out. It really depends on the needs of our business partners. Many of them have said that they'd want a student for the whole summer, not just a couple weeks at a time or a couple days at a time, but trying to find opportunities then to get our students into those businesses for these paid opportunities. One of the biggest pieces we heard is that companies are aware that they need to get students in, and they want to get students in there, but they also want to look at their productivity within their company and how do they pay someone for those positions with not getting any productivity out of that individual. So that's been a big discussion point there with them for that. I think also with them is, do they have the right mentor within the company? That's been a big piece, is putting a student with the right mentor at those companies. So whether or not they actually have that ability to do that has been a big piece there with that. We want to go ahead and go back to the slides. So you click on the business partner development, really giving, this is how we're talking with those businesses and where the conduits are at for contact with those businesses. Like I said, we've heard from many of our businesses that they get overwhelmed with phone calls from teachers or work-based learning people or the high schools calling. The majority of them, they say only call when they need something, but really working on developing those relationships and building those out a little better through our work-based learning specialist and through my office and through talking with our district admin from all the districts we work with. Want to go back to the slide there. The application is just a simple application we put together for students to fill out, showing that they wanted to be interested, really trying to get them to take this step here to really build out that interest and really get them in the habit of putting all these pieces together, how to fill out an application, how to go through an interview process, really starting to build some of those essential skills there. And it's really interesting when we ask for what the reason why they're applying for it, we get some really interesting responses from students on why they're looking to do it. Are they really interested, or are they just looking for, I'm looking at, we've asked students, I'm looking to get out of class. Well, no, that's not the reason that we want to have you out doing these things. We want to have you interested. We've had some students say, hey, I'm really interested in becoming an automotive technician. I feel that this would be a great way to do this. So having now those discussions with those students to move forward in the process. We presented a lot of this information to my administrative council, which is all of our assistant superintendents and CTE directors back February of last year, and looked at moving forward with this timeline. Obviously, with COVID restrictions and not being able to get out, we wanted to do some field trips and stuff like that as part of this as well. That's kind of slowed us down a little bit there. But we really looked at using the majority of our money to pay students or get students paid for their internship opportunities and get them out there to try to level that playing field there for many of our students. One of our biggest two internship programs are our engineering program out of Bartlett High School. And they had approximately, I think, 100 students last summer or 2 summers ago before COVID that were out doing, different internship opportunities. But once again, more of one of our affluent high schools, whereas those students, trying to level that out for those students that can't afford it or didn't know about things like this for that reason. Go ahead to the next slide. Additional supports we've looked at through our regular grant funds. We have a CNA program at one of our high schools, purchasing scrubs for those students to wear and be able to represent themselves in the district when they're out at these programs, instead of students having to buy their own and that can't afford it, trying to find ways to get more students in there. The next piece I talked about before, purchasing tool sets. If anybody knows anything or have been around mechanics, they're very territorial with their toolboxes. So having a set of tools for a student to use and start to treat those as if they're their own. Now we're building some of those essential skills there with them having to take care of their materials and their tools. But now we're able to give them that toolbox and get them that internship or get them that part-time job to be able to go and start working. We worked with one of our automotive dealers in developing what that list would look like and what tools they would require from a new hire coming in or for a student coming in to work on those positions. So we went and visited classrooms, talking with students about our work-based learning opportunities and different internship opportunities. I think Lamont put it really well when he said students don't know what they don't know, and trying to just educate them on what are the opportunities, how can we get you out there on those kind of things. The other piece there, coaching on the soft skills or those essential skills. We keep hearing it from every employer that we have out there. You know, the essential skills, the soft skills. Is a student going to show up on time? Are they going to keep their phone away? Like, I want them now to come in and start talking to students about that. And we're going to work on that here in the spring with having them come in and hopefully be able to get back in the classrooms as guest speakers. If not, we'll try to do it through Zoom or through Google Meets to have them out there. For those of us that have kids, you completely understand when it comes out of our mouth as a parent, our kids don't listen. But if it comes out of somebody else's mouth, our kids are more likely to buy into it. I think same thing with our industry professionals. If it's coming from them to our students are a little more willing to buy into that, working from there. Then the last piece there is working to offer training for our counselors on the different programs so that our counselors are aware of what's out there. One of the things I have districts right now that are planning counselor trips to go out to different businesses to see what does a welding shop look like? What does a manufacturing plant look like? It's not this dark, dingy, dirty kind of place that everyone thinks it is, but getting counselors that experience to see what exactly is going on out there so that they can best explain it to their students and work from there. We're working on our annual, what we call Teach CTE Professional Development Day coming up in March. We're going to have counselors actually get into the classrooms for manufacturing and welding and get hands-on with some activities to where they can be more aware of what's going on in the classrooms with all of those things there to help educate our students on those. I'm going to go to the next slide. Our backup plan. If I can't get enough students to be able to spend that money for the internships and things like that, so it's been difficult to try to find partners that are willing to work with it, or we got to go through the legal process to get contracts okayed and things like that for everyone. Our backup plan right now is we're working on plans for a regional competition night, so we can count it as those competitions toward the college career pathway endorsement objectives. Doing like a chop competition for our culinary. When we were down at the Capital Area Career Center last month for the EFE meeting, those culinary students did a great job with making lunch and things like that. But how do we find ways to do competitions there? I know other regions have run welding competitions for their students. Elgin Community College that I work with has done that in the past, so we're hoping that can be part of it again. One of the other parts is that a majority of our schools all have business incubator. So how can we take and do a regional pitch night? They all do their district pitch nights. They get a winner there. How do we bring all those winners from the region in to compete against one another and be able to present all those ideas on things? So that's kind of our backup plan in case we don't have that, in place there with some of those things. And I think that was the end of the slides there. Yep. So if you guys got any questions, be happy to reach out to me. Be happy to talk to anybody about what you have questions on and be able to work from there. Thanks, guys, for listening.
Thank you, Terry. And definitely would love, if you all have any questions, we definitely have time for you to ask those. Put them in the chat, unmute yourself and ask them out loud as well. The flow charts and all those pieces too. Again, as we think about this building of this resource bank and think about all these different pieces, those links are all available to you. Your charts will look a little bit different, right? But I think just very much how you might be thinking about all the players in your system for work-based learning and how they're coordinating. I think I hear that a lot, or I know I hear that a lot, right? Where employers are getting contacted from so many different folks and it doesn't seem aligned. And so having a discussion in your region of how you do that can be really helpful to support that recruitment, identify partners, and make that matching correctly. And the mentor piece is huge, right? You can have an employer say that they want to participate in something, But the person saying yes is not necessarily the person who's going to actually work directly with those students. And so how they're thinking about who then on their team will work directly with those students and making sure that they're aware of those expectations is very key. The yes people are usually just the yes people, and then someone gets voluntold, right? So. Any questions for Terry? And yes, definitely big shout outs to all the presenters and all the work and thoughtfulness that you all are doing to implement career exploration, career development experiences. And yes, here I'll put in, I think I still have it copied. One more time, just so everybody's here, the link to today's presentation. I get my screen up if you have any questions for Terry, and then we'll go to kind of next steps here.
Terry, can I ask a question regarding, you mentioned that you're paying students for the internships?
Yeah, so we worked with Karen and Marcy down at ISBE, and thanks to them for meeting with me last year. We started to look at how do we map this out, and we mapped it out as a was it 2020, and Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, if I don't say the correct account number there, it's like 2120-300 for purchase services, and being able to then have the business invoice us for a hosting fee for what they're paying the student. So the money's not going to the student, the money is going to the business that's hosting that student for their internship fee.
Correct. And it's crucial that it go that way. Like you cannot pay the students directly.
Right.
So it would have to be under a reimbursement situation. One of the questions I had from one of the EFBs recently too was they were getting a little bit of pushback on the workman's comp insurance for students in these placements. So what you can do is work out something to be like a flat rate reimbursement that would include that. So, don't let that be the thing that makes them say no.
I think the other piece that we found with that insurance requirement, like I said, we find it a lot in manufacturing, welding, because if they're not 18, they kind of balk at it a little bit. But looking, I know, trying to find ways around that. Like I said, talking to manufacturers about, can you get them in to work in quality control? Can you get them in to work in logisticals or in the shipping department or in the engineering department to talk, at least be within the company to see what the culture of the company is another big piece of that opportunity.
Great idea.
So looking at that and trying to get them out there some way, with that. But then also, if you can show that this is part of a class, the schools, and this is what I'm being told, and somebody pipe in and, correct me if I'm wrong, but the school's liability insurance for students like that, like we have students go off for veterinary science, they're covered under the school's liability insurance. So the workers' comp insurance could be, if we show them that it's covered under that liability insurance, could be offset by that. So it really is dependent upon what the company is willing to do and how they're willing to work with you on some pieces there. I know working with some other folks to try to get some sessions set up for businesses to talk about all these liability pieces and all these insurance pieces and show them kind of where we're at and how the school's liability insurance would help cover those students while they're out doing those things. Obviously there's still some things they can't do. They can't drive a forklift. They can't use an overhead chain hoist, things like that. But what are they willing to do, or what are the companies willing to have them do as part of their organization?
Thank you very much, because I've been fielding these questions in our district as we're moving toward work-based learning. A student has a paid position, another student has a non-paid position. And all of a sudden, I'm fearing though, if I open up that door, where we say we're going to pay students. I'm in a large school district. Terry, I know you have multiple schools in your region. Well, where do we draw the line? I mean,
so I got the same question there for many of my districts. So what we're doing is when students fill out that application, we're not placing them. We're actually having the companies come out and interview those students. Okay. And having the companies choose which students they want to go and intern where.
Okay.
Because now when someone says, well, why did this person get this paid spot or this unpaid spot? We're trying to make more of those spots paid, right? First and foremost by using this grant money, but then also one, it's an essential skill for interviewing that the students have to learn how to start interviewing better with some things. But now the companies are choosing who they want to go and have there.
Okay.
That way, when someone says, well, why did you place my student at business A or business B? Be like, we didn't place anybody anywhere. The companies, your student interview with these companies, and this company chose your son or daughter to go and work there.
Okay.
So trying to get around some of that question that way. I know Michael just put in there about WIOA grants. For our region, Elgin Community College controls the majority of our WIOA grants, and the county does there. So it's a little harder to get involved with some of that, at least in our area.
Terry, I guess I have a similar question to the one that was just asked, but with a different twist. How do you decide which businesses that you're gonna give that contract reimbursement to, as opposed to others which just end up being unpaid positions? Because ultimately, I see that being a big challenge going forward with some businesses going, well, you're giving, company X money to pay the kid. You're not giving us money. So how are you dealing with that right now?
Thanks for that curveball. I don't have an answer to that one right now. Because
Sorry, it's the business guy in me, Terry. Sorry.
And that's fine. I think right now I don't have enough people that are ready to jump on board right away with some of this. So I haven't gotten to that issue just yet. I think that as we move forward, if we do it as a rotating period, if we continue to do this next year out of CTI funds, right, instead of the career development grant, if we decide to do it that way for some districts, hey, we gave this to business A last year. We need to look at business B and start keeping track of that. I don't know if that's a way to be fair about it. It's a big piece there with that, I think.
It is, and it sets that's my concern with this as we talk about, the money coming from education is the precedence going forward, unless we can, somehow get some, additional funding, which of course we've all advocated for some time, but in the current environment is a bit difficult to count on. It's just, it's something obviously we need to keep an eye on and monitor.
Or someone else asked me, Brian, instead of paying the whole thing, our business is willing to take 50% and we'll pay the other 50% for some of these. So we're not taking all that money to one location. We're having some buy-in from the business as well. Like I said, they have to have the mentors available at the business. That's another big piece. Do you have someone that's there and available to do these things with students, that understands students and can talk to students? Many businesses I've talked to said they didn't have anybody. Like, they're looking for help on second shift. Great. I can get kids out here at 3 or 4 in the afternoon and they can come work for a couple hours and learn the business. And they're like, yeah, but we don't really have anybody that's a good mentor for students at that time of the day or on that shift.
Right. I guess that's the other challenge or point is some businesses are going to be able to do that. And I don't know if you're running into certain types of businesses where it's easier to come up with the placements, but I think it's just a challenge to be aware of going forward. You're a sharp guy. You'll figure it out and share it with the rest of us.
Definitely give me a challenge moving forward for sure.
Well, it's a nice problem to have if you get to that point. I mean, to your point, I mean, if you get to that point, it's a nice problem to have. It just, from my perspective, it almost is, it's a subsidy that the businesses are counting on. And if it all of a sudden goes away, do the opportunities for students. And I see Karen's 50% reimbursement comment just popped. But yeah, it just, as somebody who's seen this kind of from both sides, having been a business owner, it to me, hopefully we get to the point where it's a challenge you have to deal with because you got so many places.
And it certainly helps if it's the industries and employers that are really struggling to get workers in there, and you can sell that whole buy-in part to them of, you know, that you're helping to create your own pipeline of workers. So I think, you know, it may vary from year to year based on what the demand is doing.
And the reason we're trying to go through some of that employability skills or the essential skills with students first is also to really vet those students out before we send them out to those industries, because we don't want to send a student out that's going to, you know, put a bad light on the program or on, you know, on the position. So sending students or sending businesses a really strong student that first time around to be able to get them buying more into it and see the benefit of that. We had one business in the area that for forever, they didn't want to talk about hiring high school graduates or, you know, recent grads into their business. They were only looking for experienced people with welding. But then once they came in and saw our welding program and saw how well students were doing and what they could accomplish and what they could do within the organization, now we have 2 or 3 students that have all of a sudden gotten hired there in the last year and a half, that now the company is more willing to take people on in that, you know, hey, how many more do you have? And now the problem is, how do we continue to fill our pipeline? I think one of my schools has, I think, 9 kids in the 3rd year of the manufacturing program. And I think all 9 of those students already have jobs spoken for, already have part-time jobs at manufacturers in the area. And the companies are like, how many more do you have? Well, you know, what we need more. And I'm like, I'm not growing them here. Like, we got to find ways to get more and more kids into those pipelines. I think that showing them the internships or apprenticeships that we have is a way to get, and showing the parents mainly that we have these opportunities for kids is a way to help get more students into those programs.
I know it's time to wrap up. I really appreciate the presentations. I'm excited to see more of them, actually. I think a lot of this listening to what each other is doing, kind of brainstorming, is going to lead to some really cool projects going on out there this year. So if anyone has any questions, you know, brainstorming, funding questions, whatever, please come at me with them. Don't hesitate to contact me. Other than that, I will let you all go then.